Are you tapped into the plan and the purpose for your life? Today's topic is on purpose. And today's verse is Esther 4:14. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. You know, prompt that I did recently in ChatGPT and two prompts. And one of them was, where are you leaking your power? And the other one was, how am I betraying myself? And in those prompts, because I've used ChatGPT for quite a few things to get my writing jump started. I haven't used it to write anything, but I've used it to jumpstart my writing as prompts. And so I've told it a lot about myself. And in doing that, it came back and it gave me a few things that were just so poignant at the time that it made me sit back for a moment. And it made me question what all I was putting myself through because I wasn't following the plan and the purpose that God had given me. So I'm going to show read to you here in just 1 second what the prompt response was for mine. So not all of it, just a part of it, but let me see. For the leaking your power, it was talking about staying silent in sacred rage. You know, when you're dealing with things like I've dealt with and helping people that I help, I have been angry in a righteous way for some things that are going on. And I have sat back and I have watched. For example, the things going on within the church that I've been a part of for 20 years now. There is a sacred rage to the things that happened to Cindy and that pastor did to Cindy. There is a sacred rage for cover up. There is a sacred rage for all of that. However, I believe it's how we carry out that rage that is just as purposeful as being a testimony, as being a Christ follower. It has a weight to it. That sacred rage has a weight and a responsibility to carry out that rage in a way that brings about change. That's not just a clanging cymbal, banging gong, whatever it is. It's not any of that. It's a voice of rage that can be heard. When Jesus showed sacred rage, he showed it in a way that he was flipping tables over in the temple, right? Well, he was throwing tables over in the table. It was such a memorable moment that everybody wrote about it. I don't want to be one that's so angry and rageful at every little thing that the one big thing gets missed. Am I being clear on this? So staying silent in sacred rage, what I'm saying is there's a purpose that God is allowing me to feel the sacred rage, not just angry all the time. I'm not talking about driving down the street and somebody cut you off rage. I'm talking about that warrior defender battle mindset rage of this is wrong and something needs to change. And how do we make that change? For me, that's working with military members that have been sexually assaulted while serving. That's working with church members that have experienced church hurt or church abuse. You know, that's where my rage comes in, because people start getting taken advantage of. Once they've been abused, their defenses go down, their boundaries go down. They start being taken advantage of again. They're at risk to be taking advantage of again. That brings about a sacred rage to me. When the things happened down in Fort Hood a few years ago, that was a sacred rage for me with Vanessa Guillen. That was a huge, huge sacred rage for me that really just kind of started shifting some things in me. There was a little bit of shame. I'll be honest with you. There was a little bit of shame because 30 something years ago, I didn't stand up for myself. I really didn't have anybody around me that was standing up for me at that time. My parents were half a world away, and I'm standing before a female officer, and she's looking at me going, "You're not going to ruin this Marine's career over this, are you?" And so how am I not worthy of being fought for? And while I can't fight for everybody, I can fight for the ones that have been brought across my path. I can fight for the ones that are just like me. So, one of the things that it gave me on the where am I betraying myself, the number one thing was where you might be betraying yourself is you're negotiating with your calling. Ouch. You know, if I get angry, like I said, I got angry. I got a righteous rage. Even last summer when everything broke about the things going on at my church, I got angry. I got frustrated. I got angry at the people that were just angry and just lashing out, but weren't doing it in a purposeful manner, right? I got angry. But I think that was God stirring something up in me. And he was calling me to something bigger and deeper. And I've been negotiating with him over those things because those things are messy. Those things are not the fun things. I mean, I have a whole tribe of people like my friend Nicole that's on here that are all creatives and get to do all the fun, pretty things. And you want me to talk about sexual assault? That's not fun, God. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about trauma healing. I don't want to talk about all of those things. I want to talk about, look at this paint color. It's the color of Easter. Christ died on our, oh, wait, they're talking about messy stuff too, right? So I've been negotiating with my calling. The other one that got to me was you're negotiating or you're discounting your divine downloads. Ouch. How can you walk in your purpose? And these aren't just for me. I've talked with several people now, and I've heard that they've been feeling a lot of the same thing, that they feel like they've been negotiating with God about what he's been pushing them towards, but they've kind of been hesitant. Is that you, God? Is that not God? So they listened to the confidence thing yesterday and they're like, oh, that's the negotiating with God, because I'm not confident to step out in it, but God's got this, right? The other one was you're apologizing for your power. I've done that even in this devotional series. I've talked about how I know that I have a strong and somewhat intimidatable personality. I walk in the room and the warrior on the wall personality of me scans the room. I assess where all the egress is. I look for hazards. A part of that is risk management. Part of that is trauma. But I walk in and I look around and I observe things, and I'm always stepping back to watch the whole crowd so that if there's anything coming towards them, that I'm not in the thick of the forest. I can see the forest because I can see things coming for them. Right? We went on a walk in January in felt like hurricane strength winds in the middle of the desert. And we were walking and I was taking pictures. I was taking a lot of pictures, but I was also videoing the women from behind and catching the glimpses of fellowship and the laughter. And yes, you could hear the laughter over the wind, but it was faint because the wind was so strong. But we had such a good time in the desert, but I didn't even realize it until my social media girl was putting it up on a frame that a lot of my videos of the group was from behind, that I was watching, and I was carefully surveying terrain, what's coming ahead, what's coming from the side, all of that. And you have to watch for things that not just come from you at head on. You have to watch for what's coming behind and what's coming to your side. Yesterday, my husband pulled up somewhere and he looked out the side of his truck and he went, "Whoo!" I said, "What?" He goes, "Big snake, big black snake." He goes, "And he's gone. That snake was fast." But if he had just pulled up and opened his door and stepped out, he would have stepped right on him. So there's a power and authority in what you do, Nicole, being that warrior on the wall, standing up for your friends, watching out for their well-being while being on guard for your own well-being. That is a warrior on the wall. Now, I will say this, that has cost me relationship in the past too, because it's comfortable for me, and Nicole just said it, to shrink back. Because I can hide in the warrior on the wall mentality and not be present and not be intentional with the people I'm there. So while there is a purpose for that, it does not mean that we cancel out the relationships we're building in the process. So, one of the things that I really, just that whole negotiating with your calling, I kind of feel like that was an Esther moment when the Vanessa Guillen happened. It was God really saying to me, are you just going to sit there on your sofa and be mad about this? Or are you actually going to do something? Are you going to speak up? Are you going to start making ripples in this? I have all the reports on sexual assault in the military and the college campuses for several years back. I'm waiting for this year's report. I haven't checked it today to see if it's out, but waiting on this year's report. And every time I share those numbers, people are just flabbergasted that happens in the military. When I talk about church hurt, this past weekend, I was on Facebook and somebody made a comment about churches need to be taxed too. And I'm not getting into a political debate on it, but one guy commented, the guy that made that comment was on the East Coast. The guy that commented on it said, yeah, especially that guy that lives down the street or that church down the street from me. And he lives here. And I really wanted to get on that post and go, you need to be a little bit more specific, because here's the deal. Last summer alone, there were 13 pastors that I have a list of. And that doesn't mean that I've got them all. That's just 13 that I'm aware of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that had a moral failure of some sort. There's church hurt everywhere. You think that moral failure only affects that pastor? No, it affects all the congregants that love that pastor, love that family, love the person that was affected by the moral failure, loves the people that were abused by the pastors that are abusers. It affects a whole ripple effect. And having a voice that speaks into that feels some of that pain, feels some of that can have empathy and compassion, not just anger, is a unique bend. And so why wouldn't God allow me to speak into that? Why wouldn't God give me a platform and a purpose to speak into that? Why wouldn't God give you a platform and a purpose to speak into the things that were broken in you that He has begun a healing in? There may be something that you are turning and running away from. You may be doing the ostrich thing, sticking your head in the sand, or I call it the Scarlett O'Hara fiddle-dee-dee, I'll do it tomorrow. You cannot keep turning away from what God keeps knocking on the door to talk to you about, because He created you for this time, for this purpose, for something that is going to glorify His kingdom. And I haven't understood. I haven't understood all the chaos that He brought me through in my life. I haven't understood it, the trauma or anything, until this year. I started getting glimpses of it in 2020, but really, truly, this year has been oh, I get it now. Because my perspective, how I see things, and when I share it personally with other people, it's resonating. It's what a lot of people want to say, but they don't have the gumption to say it. They don't have the gumption to say, yes, I can absolutely hate what this pastor did to Cindy Clemenshire. I can absolutely hate that. But I can still love his wife, his kids, his family. That can reside in the same place. God hates sin, but loves the sinner. It resides in the same place. So if we're to be Christ-like with our sacred rage, we have to walk it out that way. And yes, you're right. Because you run away from what you need to face head on, because healing hurts. That was one of the things we talked about the other day, is on the forgiveness one, was that healing hurts. Sometimes you need to forgive the one that affected you, but it may be that you need to forgive yourself. Maybe you're forgiving yourself because you're carrying the weight of something that somebody else did to you. My anger, I don't have anger for the guy that assaulted me anymore. I just don't. I don't have fear of him. I don't have anger of him. I have a little bit of pity for him. I have a little bit of, and let me be very clear, I had 2 assaults, and I don't know the other one. That's a total blackout. So when I talk about my assaults, I have it all pinned on one guy. And it wasn't until we went through my medical records with the military and everything that we were able to identify that there were 2 separate assaults. And with that, my focus has always been on the one. But I was still not forgiving myself. And until I forgave myself for feeling the shame, carrying the weight, all the things that I was beating myself up for, then I couldn't truly walk in my purpose. I couldn't, and I won't say that I am completely healed now. I am not. I 100% am not. I still have little things that trigger me, but I'm working every day on it. I'm disciplined enough to stay in the trenches and work on it, and talk with counselors and talk with chaplains and work on it on a daily basis. But I also know that I'm further ahead than that girl that got assaulted last week. So I can be something for her. I'm further ahead than the young man that was assaulted a couple of years ago. I'm further ahead than some of the people that just found out about a moral failure in their pastor this week, because I had it happen last year. So forgiveness is the key. Forgiving of those that have wronged you, but forgiving yourself. And then bigger is accepting God's forgiveness. These are the 3 things that truly unlock you being able to step that boldly and confidently into your purpose. And so once you're ready to talk about it, once you're willing to face it, just don't try to do it all at once. Take small bite-sized pieces. Like they say, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. Take those small bite-sized pieces. Take time to rest between it. I haven't gone through my whole trauma healing all in one step. It has been small, minute steps. And some days it feels like I took 10 steps back. But After a few days of that 10 steps back, I realized that I actually took 10 steps forward because I got into the trenches, I got dirty, and I did it. And yeah, Nicole, that's right. It is such a daily process. And so as we wrap up today, I want to remind you today's verse was Esther 4:14. And next month, we're going to talk a little bit more about women, their power, how we leak it, how we betray ourselves, and what that looked like in the Bible too. But the challenge questions today is what in your life might be preparing you for a greater purpose? Never would I have thought that my sexual assaults would have been preparing me for a greater purpose. Never would I have thought that betrayal would have prepared me for a better purpose. So what in your life might be preparing you for a greater purpose? And then how can you step into your royal position with courage? Because there is a spot for you. There is a space for you. It's not just like Nicole and I've been talking through here. It's not just showing up. It's being present in the room and making your presence known in the room. When Queen Esther walked into the room, her presence was known because she was captivating. And so it's time to stop hiding in the shadows. You can still be the warrior on the wall, but be the warrior on the wall next to the people, not behind the people. And then what's one area where God is calling you to show up for such a time as this? So I would really love that if y'all would make that a journal prompt for today of some sort. What is one area where God is calling you to show up for such a time as this? And so really be true with yourself. I remember when I was going through my Mending the Soul class, and I'm thinking about offering a version of that type of class. But I went through Mending the Soul class, and when I went through Mending the Soul class, there was one part where I wrote that he treated my, down there like a trash receptacle. So then so did I. And as soon as I wrote it, it was so raw, so real, so truthful in that moment. I immediately wrote it and then threw my book across the room because I had never spoken to myself in that way. And if I can't speak to myself in that way, how in the world am I going to speak boldly and confidently in a room? So, what is one area where God is calling you to show up for such a time as this? All of these challenge questions are in the post with this live, so feel free to copy them and make a devotional out of them. Next month, when we start all the talks about strengths of women in the Bible, we're going to actually have downloadable devotional sheets that you can do along with us. So I thank you for tuning in today. I thank you for being interactive, Nicole. I appreciate it so much. You don't know. But tomorrow, we've done a lot of heavy lifting this week. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about rest. So I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.